I get asked a lot by people, I want to do a triathlon or I want to do an Ironman, even a half Ironman. What do I need to know? What do I need to do? And you guys have way more experience than I, but based on my experience, what I tell folks is it's not a 3-sport event. It's a 4-sport event. It's swim, bike, run, nutrition. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Move podcast, talking about the Ironman World Championships from 2024. And yes, they were held in Kona on the Big Island of Hawaii. What a pleasure. I am joined by none other than Craig Alexander, 3-time winner of this race, absolute legend in the sport of triathlon. Dude still looks like he should be out there racing. Came on the Zoom. I was like, oh, shit. Are you... You look ready to go, buddy.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I'm just trying to keep up with you in high rocks, just trying to stay in shape for life.
There we go. Hey, you get up there. You're 51. I'm 53. I'm proud of where we are. Also joined, been on the show many, many times, and was, this is a fun story. Jimmy's been known as a lot of things. He was known as is sort of my sidekick, protector, big brother when I did triathlons as a teenager. And we told the story many times, and I'm eternally grateful for that guardianship, so to speak, back, gosh, oh my Lord, almost 40 years ago. And then was sort of known as we continued to be training buddies. But now I think you're most known and is for your son, who we've just, Matthew's continued to progress and just gets better and better. And it's fun to watch. So that's now, I think, what everybody knows you. But that last name is very distinct. And so we get asked all the time when we talk about cycling, where's the next great American or the next great crop of Americans? His name's always in there. So fun to watch, Jimmy.
It is for me as well. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm definitely, I don't have the Palmars that you guys have, but I'm definitely Matthew's dad now.
Yeah.
61 years old too, by the way. I got you guys on that.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, wait, 60. I got ahead of myself.
Wow.
Don't do that.
Here, we are going to talk about the Ironman here in a second, but Jimmy, as his dad, I am genuinely curious about this. I don't think I'll ever, scratch that. I know I will never have a child race on the pro tour, so I don't know what this would feel like, but are there any nerves we know the sport's dangerous. We know stuff happens. I would imagine if my son was racing, I'd be nervous, turn on the television. It's a rainy day. It's technical. There's been other crashes. I'd be scared and nervous.
Yeah. I didn't anticipate that. But I can't, the level of anxiety, I guess, every race day, man. He's in Europe. I'm in Arizona. 2:00, I wake up, get on Twitter, crash. I'm like, shit, no names and numbers. But yeah, I didn't worry. I'm sure you were the same way back when we all raced. I don't know. I never thought anything bad was going to happen to me ever. But now watching, it's tough, man. And there's the danger. Then there's the, how they deal with the weight of expectations, all things that you can't control. And again, I never really thought about seriously, but yeah, I'm a nervous wreck, man. Look at me. Look at my hair. I'm almost as gray as you.
You have hair, sort of. A little bit of business. Then we're going to get into all the action because this one has a lot to talk about. Patrick Lange, winning his 3rd Ironman at the age of, almost 39 years old, which I just have a whole lot of thoughts about. I love it. We just all touched on how old we are, at least according to our passports. Boy, you got to root for the 39-year-old guy. I mean, come on. But before we do, today's show brought to you by Zwift. So they just released the Zwift Ride, an all-new smart bike that is changing the indoor game and making it easier and more affordable than ever before to get started riding indoors. Now, this is a true story. I was not a fan of riding indoors. I love being outdoors. But I have lived in places and been in elements where it is the option, right? And so I've had to transform myself from an outdoor kiddie to an indoor kitty sometimes. And this bike is the one. It's ultra quiet, super easy to set up. You just need one tool that's called the frame key to build it all, and it makes adjustments to saddle height, bar height, and reach. And once you're done, the frame key slots right back into the magnetic holder in the frame so that you never lose it. This adjustability makes Zwift Ride perfect for anyone in the house to use. And at $1299.99, it's a game changer. So head on over to Zwift.com to check it out. That's Zwift.com to check it out. By the way, Zwift is running, I watch a lot of American football. I don't know y'all, but they're running ads during these football games. I'm like, damn. I mean, something's going well. They're selling a lot of these bikes. I mean, you're watching, there'll be one on tonight during Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, I think they're doing well. I just got one of those Zwift rides about a month ago.
Amazing. Yeah.
Like you, mate, I love being outdoors, love being on the road, love being on the trails, but sometimes it's just a better option.
Yep. Well, now, I mean, as much as you love being outdoors, like we all do. I mean, I get asked all the time. I mean, people are people, and people in cars are just challenging sometimes. So also today brought to you by Roka. They have completely reinvented this category. They're making the sickest glasses out there. I don't go anywhere right here. These are my readers. I'm up to 2. By the way, y'all have been tracking this. I have leveled out at 2.0s, right? When we started this game, I was 1.25 and then 1.5 and 1. I have leveled out at 2.0s, right? Same technology, same lens, same everything in the prescription glasses as is in the sort of the cycling and running and sporting glasses, also in the chilling glasses. Titanium aviators right here. Complete game changer, lightweight, the best lenses on the market. Handmade right here in our hometown of Austin, Texas. And they've got the no slip. If you're like me and you sweat your face off, literally, they just won't slip off your face. Pretty amazing. Also work with the special forces, which I absolutely love. The Move listeners get 20% off. Just go to Roka, ROKA, Roka.com. Enter the code THEMOVE at checkout. 20% off, Roka.com. Code is THEMOVE. All right. Let's talk about Patrick Lange, right? What you guys let's just go around the horn and I'll come at the end here, but just high level thoughts of this race, of the athlete himself. I think the journey, I watched a lot this morning and read a lot of the interviews. Very touching to hear about the emotional part of this with his mother passing and some conversations they had towards the end of her life. But at this age, for a sport like, in fact, a lot of endurance sports where the trend is younger and younger and younger, certainly in cycling, 39-year-old guy, been many, many years since he won, breaks the course record, runs 2:37. Lots to talk about. Croy, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the course record is one thing. We'll get to that in a minute. It was an amazing performance. And first and foremost, he just beat everybody else. Obviously got to the line first. So I think the trend you talked about in cycling has been the same in triathlon. A lot of the current crop of superstars are in their sort of mid-20s. We've seen sort of a move back to a lot of the talented up-and-coming athletes just going straight to the longer distance events, which has been awesome to see, actually, bringing a lot of speed back. But I think, human physiology is, as you get older, suited to these endurance events, and also the maturity and the experience, which you can't get overnight. So, I think for a lot of athletes, they get to a certain point in life and it's not really age that precludes them. It's particularly in triathlon or an ultra endurance event like that. It's other things in life, other business opportunities, family, other things take priority, and you don't live it 24/7, 365 days of the year. And, I know with Patrick, he doesn't have kids. He's still ultra motivated. I didn't realize he was 39. Actually, I heard someone say yesterday he turned 38 in August, whatever. He's in his late 30s.
I saw both. I saw 38 and a 39. So for the purpose of this conversation, I thought making him sound older sounded cooler, but it's one of the, nonetheless, late 30s.
Nonetheless, mate, it's an amazing performance. It's his third title here. Yeah, I just think he's a great athlete. I mean, I read a few things this morning that almost trying to diminish what he's done by saying he's just well suited to this course. Well, he got a silver medal in Nice last year, which is a course he's probably more suited to with, the net vert in Nice is more than here. I mean, there's some, I mean, you guys know the course. Lange, you've obviously lived out here and ridden out here. I want to say there's close to 6,000 of vert here, but it's a different profile to Nice. It's just up and down, which I think suits a bigger, more powerful. I mean, you're punching over these climbs in the big chain ring and carrying a lot of the speed. And Nice is probably a course that I thought might suit Patrick, because I know he's a pretty good descender. He loves the technical aspects of the sport. So, and he had a great race in Nice last year. So, yeah, I mean, he's not just a runner. He was fourth out of the water yesterday, and I've seen him, I want to say, one of his previous races here, which didn't go so well, but he was in the top 2 or 3 out of the water that year as well. So the man can swim, he can bike. What was interesting yesterday for me was being one of the first onto the bike. It gave him a few options in how we wanted to race. A few of the big hitters, the horsepower came through on the bike, but he got up to Harvey in a great position. And coming down from Harvey, and for me in this race, that's where I always started to heat up. You make the turn at Harvey, you've got that 6 mile descent, which is really quick. Typically, you've got a sort of a tail crosswind there, and then you hit some of those sort of rollers as you're stepping back down to Kauai High. I think that's the time in the race you start getting warmer. And you've got to start managing yourself. Hopefully, you've been on your hydration and nutrition early. But, Patrick started getting distanced from a lot of the other contenders at that point. And the question was, has he just overbiked to stay with them? And is he starting to hurt, or is this more a tactical play? And, for me, when I saw them come in after the 112 miles, I was standing about a quarter of a mile before the end of the bike. I didn't see a guy just hanging on. I saw a guy attacking into T2. So I'm thinking, this has been his tactical play. He's been holding a little back and very disciplined, experienced move, and now he's just saying, cut me loose. And, from the first strides of the marathon course, Sam had a nice lead, but you could see Patrick was moving forward and what the game plan was, and he just looked amazing. I also read this morning that his bike split here was, I think, his best in this race by 10 minutes. It was 16 minutes quicker than he rode here 2 years ago, which I think speaks a little bit to the aerodynamics. I know that the boys are always playing around with hand position, bottle placement. They're in the tunnel every year on the velodrome. But I think as you guys know, with that sort of a time gap between his best bike splits here, that speaks to the conditions as well that they had on the course. And I just thought all round from top to bottom, he checked all the boxes. Beautiful swim, tough ride in the beginning, and then played it smart, showed a bit of discipline and experience, kept the core body temperature in check. And, that's not being a weak bike rider. That's being a smart racer. That's knowing your strengths and understanding that if I want to win this race, I'm probably going to have to run in the 2:30. So I need to manage myself well and bike in a way that I can do that. And it was, in the end, it was a convincing win. I think he was 7 minutes clear. I also read this morning it was the biggest margin of victory in a while, so maybe it was dominating. But across the board, it was a great race to be on the ground for. 16 men under 8 hours. Right. A lot of great bike splits. Cam Wurf, a guy you guys know well. You know well, Lance. I mean, I love Cam. Went to the Olympics for rowing. Can smash out huge numbers on the rowing, obviously, and rides in the pro peloton. Did Paris-Roubaix 1 year and then jumped off and ran a half marathon because he wanted to run I just love him. He had an incredible race yesterday. It was a ways back out of the swim, biked through, and then had a great run to finish 7th. So, a lot of great storylines. I thought the race as a whole was, I want to say it was the best Kona I've seen. So, and hats off to Patrick. You just can't find fault anywhere. He's a super consistent athlete over this distance, and just versatile and consistent across the disciplines. So it was a masterclass, really.
Yeah, as you said, checked all the boxes. By the way, one note on Cam Wurf. I thought that was maybe the biggest Strava flex of all time. Rides Roubaix. Okay, a lot of guys put their Paris-Roubaix on Strava. Great. And then
he put his run off the bike on Strava.
Yeah, next activity, half marathon run. I was like, okay, all right, mic drop.
He's a lunatic. He's an absolute lunatic.
Yeah. Jimmy, what do you think?
And 40 as well, right? He's a 40-year-old guy. And I think that speaks to what stands out to me. I ran into Patrick prior to race day, and he sounded calm, got nothing to prove here. That said, I've got an objective, and that was clearly to win this race. And I think his experience paid off big time here. He, like Roy was saying, the knock on Patrick, at least what I've heard, is that he doesn't ride well, that he sits in, and just doesn't do any work on the bike, which, the bottom line, the guy finds ways to win. And I think people just get bitter. How is this guy doing it? And especially Kona, but also, second in East last year. He's got it all, and people don't think that he has it all. And I don't know why he doesn't get that respect as an all-arounder. But he clearly, I went to the press conference, and a lot of the guys were talking about trying to keep up with the Uber cyclists, and that they had to, based on what Laylo did, I think a couple of years ago. And Lange, he just said, my strategy was to, I felt like if we were close enough on the bike that the runners would prevail. And I think all his experience in Kona factored into that strategy. And he said that when he got to the turnaround and saw that he was, whatever it was, 5 minutes back, he's like, oh, no big deal.
Right.
And I think he got out to maybe 9 minutes or so in the end. But however he managed that race, I mean, he was the only guy. He ran 2:37. The next fastest guy was Matt Hansen at 2:45. That 9 minute gap at the end, it was all the run. Yeah. And nobody else, whether it was their effort on the bike or hydration, nutrition.
Yeah. That's right.
And these guys missed the boat, and he covered all the bases, obviously, because he was on fire on that run from step one. Yeah. And just never let up, man. It was cool.
If you believe what you read, and of course with the time checks and GPS systems but I read a couple of the articles where, and I think the layperson can understand this. Get it. Keep in mind, swam 2.4, rode 112, gets off, runs the first 10K at a 5:35 pace. Now, to me, I'm like, okay, the guy can run. That's almost a strategic move, because he knows that that's signaling like, hey, to everybody. First of all, I think he passed 7 or 8 guys in the first 10K. But Laylo knows he's coming, right? He hears those footsteps, and then he does get it down to 5 minutes, and then it just says, all right, I got this. But when we talk about checking every box, because this just studying the race, you realize, and I get asked a lot by people, I want to do a triathlon, or I want to do an Ironman, even a half Ironman. What do I need to know? What do I need to do? And you guys have way more experience than I, but based on my experience, what I tell folks is it's not a 3-sport event. It's a 4-sport event. It's swim, bike, run, nutrition. Yeah. And this theme of nutrition not only came up yesterday in spades, but it has really come up in endurance sports. And we've seen this shift in nutritional consumption, calorie consumption, carbohydrate consumption. How much can the gut tolerate? Clearly, he nailed the 4th sport. I mean, he was right there. He knows he can run fast. He surged at the right time. He put the fear of God and laid low, and then won by 10. Got it. He wins. And I don't care what anybody says, what the quote unquote knocks are. The finish line is where the finish line is. And so see you there. Best man wins. But you kept seeing, or not kept, but you heard, I mean, if you have Blumenfeld repeatedly throwing up on the bike, I mean, this has to be this is not, most people, the layperson would watch, oh, he must have ate something bad. Or got a virus. I mean, this is all nutrition related. How much can we tolerate? We think we have it right. You get out there, the temps rise, your effort is more than you thought it would be. The gut shuts down, and all of a sudden, boy, all the warning lights go on.
Yeah, and I think speaking of Christian and the Norwegians, they've got a reputation of training very scientifically, which is not a bad thing, but also pushing the envelope, looking for those marginal gains, and trying to train their gut for maximum absorption. They're hitting very high numbers. It's interesting with social media these days and Strava flexes and Instagram flexes. You wonder what's really happening and what's just kind of trying to play with people's minds. But I mean, I've seen Christian in a couple of races where they played with his position, trying to get 1 or 2 watts here or there, and ended up cramping and having to walk because it just of that change in hip angle created a sort of a cramp using a muscle the way it wasn't used to. It wasn't sort of used to operating that way. So, yeah, the nutrition thing's been a big thing, but more recently, I guess, carb consumption per hour. And I think you hit on 2 major points. As the race gets hotter, core body temperature is crucial. And the 2 things you do to keep your core body temperature in check are pacing, smart pacing, and hydrate as much as possible. So, but then the second element of the nutritional piece is you've got to fuel your body with that energy. So you do, you're not just covering the distance, you're racing the distance. So that speaks to an intensity. And when you're at intensity, your carb consumption goes up. So it's about finding the balance. And, I guess that comes with the experience. One guy who impressed me yesterday was Magnus Ditlev, who got second. Big guy, 6'5", super powerful bike rider, just a great all-round athlete. I mean, it's interesting. We try and pigeonhole athletes because they're a better but all these guys are good in all 3 disciplines, as are the top ladies in the sport. I mean, you don't get to this level having too many weaknesses, but all the talk beforehand was Magnus was a contender, and he is. I love watching this guy race. I love watching him on the bike. He's beautiful to watch. I found it interesting. At some point, he clearly wasn't getting across to Laidlow. Hit a rough patch, started losing time. The front chase group ended up catching him towards the end. And, I think most people at that point were saying, oh, Magnus's race is done. His big card to play was the bike, but just a tough dude. Hit the marathon course, dropped back a few places, and then, not known for his marathon running the way Patrick is, but just gutted it out, got back in a rhythm, and got himself up to second. And, it's interesting because, as you guys know, you've both raced at a very high level. You do need some ego and confidence to execute, but you also need to know when to park the ego a bit and be smarter about it. And, Magnus is a guy, I think, didn't throw the towel in when his big play didn't come off. He just tried to work out other ways to make it happen, and, ended up with another podium, which I think is his second or might have been his third at the Ironman World Champs. So he had an incredible day as well.
Speaking of core temp, and I don't know why I didn't think of this when I raced triathlons, because we're talking about core temp and how do you get hot. I mean, would you go run the marathon with a trash bag on? No, you wouldn't. Your core temp would go through the roof. Well, and we get deceived when we swim, whether you're swimming in a pool or you're swimming in the ocean or a lake or whatever. You're like, oh, I'm in water. I'm cooling off. Well, no, you're not. You're sweating. You're sweating in the water. So I read the reports of early on in the race, somebody lost their swim cap. Now, this sounds like nothing. But then more and more articles had the word lost in quotes, lost their swim cap. Well, if you think, would you swim 2.5 miles as hard as you can with a piece of rubber on your head, which is one of the main places where you ventilate and regulate temperature? Jimmy, look, it happens, right? In a mass start swim, it's physical. Arms are flailing. People are fighting for position. People are fighting for a draft or a group, and your goggles get knocked off. I'd never seen the swim cap come off, but I guess it could happen. But all of a sudden, mysteriously, we're starting to lose swim caps. I'm not criticizing this. I'm more pissed at myself that I didn't think of this. This is, what a great idea. Just take the swim. Say you got hit. I was, Riccitello hit me in the head. I got my goggles back on, but I can't find my swim cap. Meanwhile, my head is not about to explode because I'm going so hard. But honestly,
yeah,
Be careful, Jimmy. Conflict of interest. You're the head referee.
Yeah.
Okay, Crow, you can answer it. Then I thought it was brilliant. I loved it.
I didn't see anything happen. I didn't see anybody.
So there you go. Crow, you see what he did there? That was good.
This said, I can say with certainty that back in my day, before Crowley's day, and I know Craig will have the same experience, but there were hot, humid races where you put your goggles on under your cap, you put your cap on, loosely, it's up high, dive in, and the cap comes off the back of your head, and you're like, oh shit, I lost my cap, and it does make a difference.
Yeah,
of course. But they started to crack down on that, and say, look, you better you're losing your cap off, and you better carry two, because we use that for identification on the water for safety reasons. And I do think it's an advantage, and it's something that from a rules perspective, the refs are going to have to start looking for, I think, because I don't know the scientific data, but I agree with you, Lance.
No, but we've all been there. I mean, it would make.
I lost my cap a lot. Yeah. I don't know about you, Crowley, but back in the day.
I've seen you dive in a lot, so it has to be the dive. I know you wouldn't take it off or set it up to fall off intentionally. No, I'm
just saying, full disclosure, we did purposely lose our caps back in the day at some races. At some point, it was a pretty popular tactic, and then it got fixed, right?
Guess what? It's back. That tactic seems to be. Yeah. By the way, as most people know who follow the Ironman, especially the one yesterday, there's no diving in. So
true. I don't know. Lose that excuse. It's got to be somebody smacking you on the head or.
Yeah, I got.
I don't know, Troy, did you lose your cap back in the day?
I lost my cap. I mean, there was a while there where, of course, you go to register and you pick up your race pack, the swim caps. They started manufacturing them in silicon, so they were double the thickness, which is actually what you use in a colder race. You want a thicker cap to keep for the obviously for the opposite effect. But it was something that everybody talked about when the water temps got up into the 70s and even low 80s. That you got to manage the core body temperature. That's the start of the race. You don't want it skyrocketing there. So it was definitely something that we all talked about. And if it happened to come off because you didn't jam it down around over your ears, well, so be it.
Yeah.
I just submit that for 2025.
Yeah, please make these changes. I just thought it was an amazing theme because the more and more I read about it, the fact that the word lost then ended up in air quotes. I was like, oh, that's a great idea. We're going to keep talking about the Ironman 2024. But before we do, today's show also brought to you by Ketone IQ. Now, we often hear that fasting and exercise are good for the brain. HVMN launched the world's first drinkable ketone in 2017. Ketone IQ is their latest innovation on ketones. Got a little bottle right here. Better effectiveness, taste, and cost. I actually drink my ketones, as you all know. I mean, I swear by it. I just do. I'm not plugging it. I'm just telling you a true story here. Absolutely works. They have a partnership as well with Visma Lisa Bike. So they're doing a ton of research and studies in and around the effects of ketones on not just actual performance, but for recovery. 30% off your first subscription order plus a free 6-pack when you use the link ketone.com/TheMove. That's ketone.com/TheMove. Also today brought to you by AG1. Here's the deal. It's just all about taking control of your health. I literally start every day. I love pattern and process. And so I start my day the same way every day. I would literally kind of carve a path in the wood floors from my bed to my coffee maker or to the kitchen. But I started every day with AG1. I drink my AG1, wait a little while, have my 2 cups of coffee, and I get on with my day. It's all about, for me at least, taking control of my health. Speaking of studies, tons of studies being done from the team at AG1 to prove the effectiveness and also the safety. You guys should know that you can totally trust this product, and you don't have to take it from me. My good friends out there Peter Attia, Andrew Huberman, they'll tell you AG1 is a game changer. If a comprehensive solution is what you need for your supplement routine, then try AG1. Get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs. Yep, that's 5 travel packs. You boys are on the road. Probably you should be traveling with your AG1. Head on over to drinkag1.com/themove. That's drinkag1.com/themove. Last one of the day brought to you by OneSkin. Now, we already admitted, right? 60 years old, 53, 51. You got a couple of old dogs on here. Here's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with dry skin, deeper wrinkles, especially Jimmy. These are just a few of the visible signs of aging, something that today's sponsor, OneSkin, knows all about. And I think I speak for all of us. None of us are too concerned about our appearance. We just roll through our day, and it is what it is. But healthy skin is important to us. That's why we love the topical supplements. They also help your skin feel and behave younger as you age. OS1 is a scientifically proven peptide to decrease lines and wrinkles, boost hydration, big key, boost hydration, and help with the thinning skin that often comes with aging. OneSkin is the world's first skin longevity company. By focusing on the cellular aspects of aging, OneSkin keeps your skin looking and acting younger for longer. Get started today with a 15% off offer using the code THEMOVE at oneskin.co. That's oneskin.co. Use the code THEMOVE. All right, back to the race. Should give a mention, right? We touched on at the top of the show, American cycling fans wondering when we're going to have an American winner of the tour, an American contender of the tour. It's been a minute. I think I looked on 2002 since this last year that we had an American winner of the Ironman in Hawaii. But shout out to Rudy von Berg. I just started tracking this guy's career. He finished on the podium, right? 3rd place, pretty cool. But 2002 since an American race. It's funny when you go on Wikipedia and you see the list of past champions, it's just stars and stripes, stars and stripes, stars and stripes. And then a couple of these Aussies start to trickle in there. And then this Aussie really trickles in there. And then the Germans come, and we've had to wait 22 years. Truly a global sport, but good race by Rudy.
Awesome race by Rudy. I don't think it was a surprise. I want to say he was 4th last year in Nice. He's also finished on the podium at the half Ironman or 70.3 World Championships. Actually, I was in the coffee shop of the lobby here this morning, and I ran into his dad, Rudolph, who raced here in the mid 80s. So it's pretty cool story. He was a very proud papa, as you could imagine.
Yeah.
Very emotional. But yeah, Rudy he's a guy who's been just on a sort of an upward trajectory, chipping away and getting great results. I want to say he had a couple of fantastic wins 4 or 5 years ago. He won the European Championships, beat the great Javier Gomez, who was a dominant force at the time. He was one of the only guys who beat Javier over that sort of 70.3 distance. Yeah, I don't think it was a surprise. And he's thrown his name right into the mix of contenders for sure moving forward. I think it's one thing to, I guess, think that you have the ability to do it and have other people tell you that you have the ability to do it. It's another thing to do it. And I think now he's got on the podium, he probably believes that he can do it. He probably believes he belongs in that company with those other guys. And sort of he's definitely one to watch moving forward.
Right.
100% agree. And yeah, I think his dad won his age group here at least once. Yeah. Actually, multiple, I'm sure of it. But yeah, Rudy's a super talent, and like you said, he had those big results. I think he's always felt like he could do well here, and hasn't come. But I think with his maturity and experience, he'll understand that regardless of what's going on in the race, that he has the skill set to win. And I think maybe in the past, and this is just me thinking, he may be one of those people that have paid more attention than necessary to the people behind him on the bike. These guys are, I'm pushing 350 watts, they're pushing 250, instead of just doing his thing, and relying on his his attributes to get him across the line. And I think for the most part, he did that yesterday. I listened to him in the press conference say that he had a great swim. He actually was in a position early to push the bike. He tried to kind of snap the elastic in this group that was pretty big, right? 22 guys, I think, or so, for a long time this year with the lack of wind on the bike course and just everybody figuring out how to optimize aero, how to get the right nutrition and hydration in. And then you had the cloud cover early.
Yeah.
It was on the beginning of the bike. And I think a lot of people paid for that on the way back when it got hot, anyway, I think Rudy did his own thing for the most part. I had confidence in his overall craft, and get a fourth. You're right. He now knows that he can win this race, and he may be the first American.
Jimmy, how old is he?
Is he like 26 or 27, Croy? Maybe.
I think he's mid to late 20s. Yeah.
So he's got time.
He's right in the sweet spot. Sure. Absolutely. His window's open. now.
Interesting. I just
good bike too, right? A month ago, he switched from Trek to Factor. And I think he has a new running shoe sponsor as well. So he changed a lot, like late, and didn't rarely does that work out, but I think a combination of things just gave him some confidence, and more. A lot of these guys give up, when the race doesn't go as planned on the bike, or they're in super cycling shape, and they're looking at their numbers, and there's 22 guys behind them, and it's like, what the hell? What am I going to do? And I think when you have the experience level and the maturity to just do what Magnus did, right? You heard him say that he sat on his ass started hurting at the end of the bike. The last hour, he couldn't ride in the aero position, lost all of his lead, which he
wait, he couldn't ride in the aero position because his ass started hurting. Wait, what did I miss?
Yeah, he'd said that he had a glute issue. So okay, sorry,
yeah.
To be more specific and use the
earlier we were talking about gut issues, and I was like, wait a minute, what? Don't tell me this. But yeah, I got you.
No, it wasn't that.
That's why you don't wear a white rain suit.
Yeah,
he got the rig. He got booty lock, I think, on the end there, and lost his lead. Literally sat in transition, contemplating whether he should start the run, and then was like, what? I've got so many people here that are backing me. It would be idiotic to not start the run. He gets out there, and like Crowley said earlier, next thing you know, the gap's stabilizing to the people in front of him. Then it's shortening, and he just did his thing,
And who knows if the gut was an issue, because we all know, right? Once the gut goes bad, it feels like it will never end. But if you can figure out a way to stabilize that, then you're good, right? Then you can just start putting one foot in front of the other and faster and faster. But it really, it shows you how tough these guys and gals are. Blumenfeld even finished. I think I read he finished 31st or 39th. That's, whether it's because he has family there to support him or whatever. That's imagine, right? This guy comes into the race and says, thinking to himself, I think I can win. And all of a sudden you're not going to win. Right. What's the worst thing you could think about is going and running a marathon with all of these issues, but to tough it out. There
were a lot of high class guys that soldiered through that race and ran 4 hours, and it's respect. It's cool to see, and it's so easy to pull the pin, but I think every step you make here in this race, you learn something. And I think maybe they just feel like they'd be cheating themselves if they didn't suffer through this and learn and figure it out.
Yeah, but, I want to say this current generation are great at that. As you mentioned, it's probably humbling when you're one of the pre-race favorites or the favorite to have to, have your tail between your legs, but they do respect the race and the history, and they're tough. It's a tough generation. So Lionel Sanders was another guy back in the field, but they honoured the race, and I guess they honoured the sacrifice of their family and their support crew. And speaking of up and comers, though, I want to give a shout out to a young kid who ended up having a tough day yesterday, Trevor Foley. I was standing about probably 200 or 300 meters from the end of the bike, and this kid was on the front of the group that Cam Wurf was in, and by all reports, he'd been doing a lion's share of the front of the work. Well, it's non-drafting, but he sat on the front, which is a tough place to be. But this kid's a runner. He's young. I want to say he's like a 2:15 marathoner. He was a college. He had a scholarship for running in college. He went to the University of Florida. Anyway, he's coming in off the bike, taking his feet out of his shoes, and it happened right in front of me. Popped his feet on top of the shoes, and one of the shoes has hit the ground, and the bike's high-sided and flipped him off, landed on his head and his shoulder, and I went and picked him up. There was quite a bit of crowd there. We picked him up. He was in shock. We poured some water on him, and we said, mate, why don't you just hop on your bike after a minute or two and roll down into T2? You might be able to, if you get your body moving. I mean, he was in the top 10 or top 15 at the time, and he still had his eighth to play. The run's coming. So he ended up he actually said to me, can you go and find my mum or my fiance and let them know? So he's rolling into transition. He couldn't head out on the run. They took him to medical. I ended up finding his mum and his fiance, and we actually saw him this morning. But he's a kid to look out for. He won Lake Placid this year. Just another one of these young guys who's come straight into the sport. They're bringing all this speed in, and I mean, your heart goes out. It's a long build-up, as you guys know, when you're sort of targeting one or two events in the year, and then that happens, and you're reaching for a little bit more, trying a prototype shoe, and it just didn't work out, and it ended up terrible crash. But thankfully, he was okay. They took him off for the head scans and everything, and I mean, he'll live to fight another day, but he's certainly one to watch.
Noted.
He spends a fair bit of time in Tucson training too, and I've seen him just grind away the last couple of years. But man, his bike and run are top notch. And I was at the penalty tent, which is 400 meters the other way down the road, and I'm watching these guys ride by. Same thing. I look, just watching him go. The next thing I know, he's head over heels in the grass, and I'm like, oh, shit, And but there were people right there to him, but I didn't think it was that bad because I saw him get back on his bike. But afterwards I heard it was pretty significant.
Jimmy, speaking of officiating, and we touched on this in the pre-show, there's some new technology for the bike portion to help monitor drafting. And we all know this, and the longtime fans of the sport know. I mean, in races like Ironmans, right? Drafting is not allowed, and in ITU races in the Olympics, it is. And to me, they look like two totally different sports. I digress, but it's not allowed. But up until recently, it's sort of been sort of old school, right? It's been to the human eye, deciding if somebody's in the drafting zone, pulling them aside, putting them in the penalty box. But fast forward, we got this new, and I kept reading about this, and I was thinking, what are they talking about? And then you just mentioned it in the pre-show, this Race Ranger, some new tech that I got to hear. I don't know, and I'm not making this up. I don't know anything about this other than what I read this morning, but apparently helps monitor the distance between athletes and warns them. But give me the 411 because I'm genuinely curious.
Quick scoop is that it's a system of lights. You've got a unit on a front fork. It's about the size of a hockey puck, maybe a small hockey puck. And then you've got a unit that attaches to the back of the bike. And the unit on the front communicates to the unit on the back of all the other bikes. On the back unit is a light, and when you get within 17 meters and up to 14, there's a solid orange light. When you go from 14 to 12, it's a solid blue light, and then when you're inside 12, it flashes red. And so we've taken that current. So we've now got, for all intents, we now have literally an objective draft zone that athletes can use to see where they are in relation to their peers. Refs can see as well, and not just you now have vision forward because the lights are bright. You can easily see 15 people from the back now. So where you place a ref, you have more, you can use fewer refs that you would, but you don't have to look behind you anymore, is what I'm saying.
If you get in the red, is that sending some signal that the violation has occurred, or this is just for the ref to then pay attention?
Their vision in the future is to have live real-time comms, that feed to somebody in a control room that can then get that information out to refs. But the reality is that that's a ways down the line. At least I think it is. Race may
right.
Mine, but
fascinating.
For now, it's an aid, right? It's like the reflectors in Kona that we used to tell pro to use.
Yeah.
Those reflectors are 40 feet apart. And so that, the old school race ranger. So now everybody knows where they are. They also know that the refs are pretty strict now with respect to, the rules. The main rule that people get dinged for isn't blatant drafting. It's you enter the draft zone, you go from 12 meters to 7 meters, and then you back out without passing. The rules require you to pass. So now the athletes know that the second they see a flashing red light, the only option for them without risking getting a penalty is to go forward. So they stay in that. They want the light in front of them to be off or orange. And the second that light changed from orange to blue, and it's like, shit, I'm within 14 meters, they put the brakes on a bit. But as far as race dynamics, because penalties have been handed out for this, and you saw this in Kona, if you knew about Race Ranger going into it early on with that 22-person group, you could imagine how advantageous it is to be at the front, right? Because you can control what's going on, and the refs are calling these yo-yos, these in and outs. So everybody back there is safe. You've got 22 people, the second or so to go 12 meters. So, you're 30 seconds back at the back. I don't want to have to pass, right? So I'm going to keep a safe distance, and that allows the front people to do their thing. So they're pushing harder now to try to, anyway, I think what happened at around 25K was Christian was stretching it out, and then Magnus went over the top of him. Christian, with a huge effort, based on what it looked like on TV, Christian tried to keep up, couldn't quite make it, then puked his brains out. I think, indirectly or directly as a result of that effort, whatever he had eaten before that, with Christian trying to make that effort. Anyway, it was the winning effort. It got Magnus off the front, and Christian too, until he faded a bit. But so everybody's watching that. Like for a while, it was a cluster. You're looking on TV, and the light flashes red, and everybody, on 4 people, if somebody sits up at the front, they're like, shit, I can't do this. And then there's a little bunching up, and everybody's like, I got to pass, or I'm going to spend 5 minutes in the penalty tent. Took a while to sort itself out. The wind would have helped more, but it did sort itself out. And Race Rangers, it's been a huge help for everybody to see what 12 meters is, to see, and they're using it in a way not to see how close to 12 meters they can ride, but to stay safe. So as the refs are enforcing the rules, athletes are using it properly versus how close can I get to 12. And
this is everybody. This just the pros, or every athlete?
Pros.
Just the pros. Okay. I was gonna say that.
And our Pro Series races are using it, so not every pro race is using it. But it's cool, and I heard a lot of positive feedback from the athletes yesterday. It's just nice knowing where you are literally with respect to the draft zone.
Yeah,
you control your destiny more. If you choose to use it to see how close you ride to 12, then you run the risk of getting a penalty. But there's no doubts now. The light flashes red. You know that you could get a penalty, even if it's for 1 or 2 seconds. If you don't pass. Yep. So it's pretty cool. And one more thing, man. It's opened up the race to brave athletes, right? Because they know it's tougher for a group to manage themselves when everyone can see what 12 meters is definitively. The people who can pedal are incentivized now to put it down, and look, Sam would have done that regardless because he did it 2 years ago. without Race Ranger. But the others, I think, have a bit more, they're encouraged more to do their thing on the bike.
Right.
That's my thoughts anyway.
Let's finish, and this is also another question, but let's wrap up with, it's been a couple of years where they split these fields, right? And now they now alternate. Of course, we had the men's world championships in Nice, France last year. This year they're in Kona. This will flip again next year. The women will be back in Kona. The men will be back in Nice. I don't know. What, and maybe Crow, you have thoughts on this, but what is this a forever thing? Or is there, I don't want to get any heavy talk out of school, but like,
I'll have a crack at it. I hope it's not a forever thing in terms of the men and women on separate days. I think one of the great things about the sport is the men and women have always been together. I always feel triathlon has been at the forefront of equality in terms of racing opportunities, certainly prize money. I think sponsorship opportunities are now sort of in that realm as well. So I know there were concerns from the girls that some of the elite age group men were sort of getting involved in the race, and I think that's a legitimate concern. I think that definitely was happening. So, I mean, ultimately, the integrity of racing has to come first in terms of you can't have some guys with their ego from the age group getting involved and someone getting towed up to the front. Or as far as the venues, I mean, I think Nice has history in our sport. There used to be, I mean, I'm a sort of a middle of the range size guy. I'm 5'11". I think that course would have suited me maybe a touch more than the Kona up against the big boys with the power on the bike, although in Kona being a little bit smaller on the run helps for sure. But I mean, again, this comes down to personal preference. This race in Hawaii is what got me into the sport. I saw it on television in the 80s, watched all the legends and the icons race. I mean, I was a soccer player until I was 20. I played soccer until I was 20. Quite a bit bigger than I am now. I probably didn't have the profile to be an endurance athlete at that point. And I was more a speed athlete. I mean, I used to play the speed positions in the team sports that I played. So, but it was the Ironman in Hawaii. It was iconic, and that lit a fire in me. So from a personal standpoint, that was the race that got me into the sport. That was the race that captured my imagination. When I started doing triathlons, I started in the shorter distances. I found a nice little niche in North America. I mean, I raced in Europe initially for 3 or 4 years. Then I loved the US short course circuit, all the races I'd seen on television as well, like Chicago and St. Croix. It wasn't unusual to flick on the television and see those races. And in fact, there's a picture of Jimmy winning St. Croix that still pops up on one of those History of Triathlon Facebook pages all the time, which I love. He had a little bit more hair back in those days, but he had a good-looking rig and he was a good-looking man back in the 80s and early 90s. And
I was just going to say he was probably wearing a Speedo. As soon as I was thinking that, you were talking about him having a good-looking rig, so I didn't say it, but he
did have a Speedo, and he actually should have been at the underpants run here last Thursday with that rig. But I digress. I mean, we had 2 great athletes from Australia, Greg Welsh and McKeely Jones. They were winning big races in America, so those races were on TV on television. A lot of the big US races, but the main one was Hawaii. So for me, this has a very strong emotional element to it, and it's probably an emotional decision. But I'm not for innovation, like we just talked about Race Ranger. Technology's everywhere now. It's infiltrating all areas of our life in a very positive way if we know how to use it the right way. I'm not against progress, but I love the Big Island. It's for me to be like, as a golfer, do you want the Masters at Augusta? If you're a tennis player, you can't really move Wimbledon from Wimbledon because it's called Wimbledon, but it just has that sort of overarching element that transcends the sport. I mean, I know when I used to check my bike in at the airport, people would say, are you a cyclist? I'd say, no, I'm actually a triathlete. And then they'd say, the next question was, have you done that race in Hawaii? That's kind of the race.
That's right.
That people knew. So I'm not against change, though. I mean, change, innovation, progress. But for me, I would like the men and women back together. So I think that's a big essence of what I used to love about racing here. And
I think that's right. I mean, you read a lot about, and we've all been there, right? And I think we all probably share that we're not. I mean, I'm not that woo woo. You know what I mean? I think we all share that. But that island has something special, right? And the locals will call it the mana, the energy of the island. It is. And you read, I mean, even Lange was talking about, he said, as soon as I got off the plane, he said, I felt it. And by the way, Nice, France is fantastic, beautiful place, and also has a ton of triathlon history. Let's not forget, right? Before there were sort of dueling long course world championships, you had the Hawaii Ironman and you had the World Long Distance Championships, slightly different distances. This was Mark Allen's game for so long. He dominated that event, could never crack the Kona code, finally came over and got 6 Konas, but it was a hell of a race. But there's something about the Big Island. It's there. And I think I'm with you. These aren't our decisions. It's certainly not mine. And I just wonder, you know, if it just for the athlete, you're like, well, it wasn't, you know, I won the world championship. I won the Ironman world championships, but it was the year that wasn't neat. You would never want it to, might be making this up, but long story short, that is a very special place. And you said it, Crowe. Like if somebody says to you, oh, you're going to do the one in Hawaii, they are talking about that place, that start line, that event, that history, that heritage, that mana. That's it. Like, so Jimmy, again, you don't have to, it's worth floating.
Kona's Kona, man. I didn't have I had a desire to do it in 87. I didn't finish. And then I'm like, I'm never doing this again. You know, I'm stick to the 2-hour events, which I did for the most part. Did it once in 99. Anyway, Kona is magical. Again, I'm not woo-woo either, but you just can't deny it. You know, you come here and it's the island itself, but the event itself too. You know, I used to watch people on this course and just, you know, their personal journey it's there on for everyone to see, you know, on their face, you know, just body language, and at the finish line, especially, you know, everything that people have gone through, you know, Lange's motivation with the passing of his mom. I mean, you see all those stories play out, and nowhere do you see that more than Kona. So I hope Kona's here forever. As far as the single, you know, I can even say the single gender events, it's super important to me to protect the integrity of the women's race. And like Crowley said, it would be hard, but I suppose possible. You know, you don't want age group men coming into the pro women's field, and ideally any pro woman, you know, of all the 55 starters, you don't want any of them to have to I can't think of another word, but commingle with the age group guys, you know. Mm-hmm. So you got to figure that out, and if that can be figured out, you know, a dual gender race again is possible. I haven't talked to a lot of people, to be honest, to men and women, to see which they preferred. Mm. But I think the intentions, my understanding anyway, you know, to give women their own day, their own race, to also, as you guys know, there's a finite number of spots that pier only fits a certain amount of people. And the way the qualifying spots are dished out, blah, 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 it's hard to get 2,400 women here.
Yeah. It wasn't a criticism or critique. It was just a question. Oh, yeah. I mean, I know you got it that way, but I just want to make sure the audience knows that, like, just a question. And by the way, this is not unique to the sport of triathlon. This has been, for those who follow gravel racing. Yeah. I mean, this is probably the single biggest debate and issue with, you know, call it professional gravel racing, because these women are just so strong and so fast, and, you know, they're stronger than most of these dudes that are out there trying to win their age group, or even the dudes who are trying to get 15th in the men's race. Like, those races, you would look at that and go, well, they should be separate, and so are separated. So that it's not unique just to try it. Also,
that's a perfect comparison, really. Yeah. You know, yeah, and it's tough, as you know, from looking at what the the thought processes are in gravel racing. You know, the opinions that the women give. I mean, some of them want to be on their own. Some of them are like, oh, shit, I'd like to sit in. I can keep up with Keegan Swenson as my husband, you know, or not, but you know, some people might want that group, that male pack dynamic.
By the way, there's not too many people keeping up with Keegan Swenson on anything, but
that's a fact.
I know your point.
Unless he wants to, but yeah, it's a tough problem to solve. How much of a head start do you give them? You know,
right. That's it. And you're dealing with daylight, trying to get everybody in, get everybody out, the peer limitations on the, yeah. Well,
so yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And venues, it's just hard to get separation, you know, in most, just from a practical standpoint. So, but I'd be interested. I got to start talking to people to see what, like vibe wise, you know, what they prefer.
Right.
You know,
I think I would love that feedback. Cause that's just that's what I'm curious about.
I am too, actually. And I didn't think about it really until this year. I was more focused on, you know, this is really cool. The women have their own day. And I didn't worry so much about the men because they've always had their own race, or just because they're on the course first. But vibe wise, it'd be interesting to hear. It was a pretty cool vibe in Nice. You were there, Croy, this year.
No, I wasn't. I watched it on the coverage, but I heard everyone loved it who was there. So
yeah. But
you're right. You're not sending people to, you know, Peoria, right? I mean, this is Nice, right? And the bike course is dynamic and beautiful and technical and very similar sort of, you know, running along the Promenade des Anglais. It's got that out and back vibe as well. It's got a lot of history. Got the water right there, so it's watching. Lots of people, you know, built in fan base right there for sure.
Yeah. And that's sort of what I mean too. You know, there's the vibe that the athletes have, and then there's the vibe coming from the fans and the spectators and all the people that come in. It's just a more diverse group, potentially, when you have men and women in the same race from a fan base standpoint, the people that show up to support and watch. And I just haven't paid attention to the vibe. I haven't really read much about it either, but maybe, you know, as each year goes by, more people will talk about that, the vibe aspect, you know, of spectating. Anyway.
Okay. Well, Patrick Lange, folks, I mean, the 3-time champ, 38 or 39 years old, 237. I mean, so many things stand out for me. Emotional win. It's fun to watch and fun to talk about. And so, Crow, you're a legend. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for the invite. Great to chat, boys.
What are you heading? What are you going back to Australia soon?
Yep, tomorrow. So early flight back into our dad duties. So looking forward to it.
Oh, wait, did I hear you just before we leave here? Are you talking about doing a high rocks, or is this you just messing with me? No. I see the pipes. Like it's a little concealed with the foam, but I see some. Have you been doing some? It looked like you'd been doing some farmer carries. Okay.
I've been on the ski erg and a few other things. Yeah, I mean,
you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. This motherfucker is coming for the 50 to 55 age group. This is, you know what?
What about me?
I'm not worried. In fact, I'm not at all worried about you, Jimmy. But I'm looking there now. He's flexing. No. I just saw it on the screen. Look at guys. Okay.
And you're a couple of age groups above us, Jimmy. We're not worried about you.
Well, even if he wasn't,
I can carry things, man. Don't count me out.
Go ahead, keep going.
Well, I'm just saying. I know I've got a baggy shirt on. Otherwise, you'd notice.
You got to get more fitted with your clothing, Jimmy. That's the new thing. It's got to be fitted.
Yeah. That's why he did. That's why he didn't do that run.
Size down, man. You got to size down.
No, this is a little known fact before you close. They prohibited me from the underpants run. I mean, it's too distracting, and they don't want me out there.
That's one of the unforeseen problems with the single gender events. The underpants run was a sausage fest this year.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what? We could have saved a lot of time talking about the commingling of the fields and the way is that right? I mean, we could have just cut right to it. That's it. You know,
underpants run.
First underpants run. I was I should have been here last year.
Yeah, well, we now we know we will be there next year. Bunch of creepers out there, fucking Riccitello out there.
Yeah, like everyone wants to see us run around in our undies.
No,
all right, guys. Yeah, don't say anything. Just this is when I've known you a long time. I'm gonna cut you off. Don't say anything. All right, boys. Thanks for coming on, and everybody, thanks for tuning in.